I think before we do that, let's just add an additional level of detail to our wall. Because we've moved it up in a rather arbitrary value at the moment, so the height is, it's suitable for the game character, but it doesn't really give us much of an indication of how high it is. So what I'll often do is just put some additional loops, some edge loops in there to give me an idea of how high, whether it's 1 meter or 2 meter, etc. So I'll show you how that's done. So I'm just going to select my wall. I'm going to hold the space bar, left mouse button, go to the right view. I'm just going to press F to zoom out. I'm going to press 4 to go into wireframe mode, and we need to turn on our grid. So I'm just going to turn on our grid. So we can see now that our ceiling height, if we just move this object, you can see there we've got it selected. So our ceiling height is roughly here, so I'm going to basically go to vertex mode, and I'm just going to make ours 3 meters high. So I'm going to click V and drag up to here. Sorry, V will snap to verts. I need to click X. We're being silly. So there we are. It's now 3 meters high. If I click on this particular object, this is our, or it should be. Oh, that's our wall. Got the thing about it. Let's just do that again. Oh, we've moved our ceiling 3 meters high. Don't worry, we need to have done that anyway, so we need to just do the same here. So I'm going to go back into the right view. I'm going to right click, go to vertex, select all the vertices, and then I'm going to click and hold X, which is going to snap to the grid line and just move that up to here. So now essentially we have, to go back into perspective mode, it's 3 meters high. So I'm just going to go back into the right view. We need to make sure we select in object mode our walls. So I'm just going to do quick drag select there. We can always just move it to make sure that, and press undo to make sure we have the right thing. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to effectively add in some splits in there, and then we'll manipulate those so they are exactly 1 meter high. So if we are looking to create some division within this, we can click on the object in object mode, shift right click, go to the multi-cut, and if you press Control and just hover up and down one of the vertical edges, it will allow you to just put a split in. So if I click the left mouse button now, it will create a split there. If I click off Control, it's not going to do anything, it's going to produce some weird stuff. Click Control again and add another horizontal edge loop. I'm just going to undo that because I think I placed it in the wrong place. Control and just add one there. Have an experiment with that. If you make a mistake, just undo it. So I'm going to go to my right view, and what I need to do is just go into object mode. So I'm just going to go into, vert mode. I'm going to select this particular section over here, which should be the first row. If you look carefully, so first row over here. You can either do it in vert mode, or I'm just going to click on shaded mode. You can either do it in vert mode, or you can do it in edge mode. If I was to do it in edge mode, you would just right click on the object, edge mode, and double click that edge. So now we have that edge double clicked. Let's go back into our right view, and we know that each one of these squares is 1 meter. So if I hold down X and drag along to this point over here, we now have a 1 meter grid line there, which is great. I'm going to go back into perspective mode. I'm going to double click the secondary horizontal edge loop, go back into the right view. I'm going to click and hold X, and as fate would have it, we weren't a million miles away anyway really, so I'm just going to drag it to that point over here. So we now have 1 meter, 2 meter, and now you can see that each one of these now is 1 meter high. And I'm just going to right click on that, go back into object mode and hide my grid again. So now we can get a pretty good indication of when we start making tables and chairs, how high things are in relation to 1 meter height, so to speak. So we do need to obviously name these particular meshes correctly, so when they appear within UB4 they all make sense, so that's what we should do next. So I'm going to quickly just save my file. I'm going to go into the outliner. You should be able to access it from here if you're not going to use a spacebar. Otherwise, press the spacebar, Windows, Outliner. And within this, it's got some planes at the moment. So what we do need to do first is delete all the history and freeze the transformation. So I'm just going to zoom out, do a drag select on our 3 components. I'm going to go spacebar, edit, delete all by type history, and then I'm going to do the same, spacebar, modify, freeze transformations. And just click that. I'm just going to drag these out of the group they are in the moment. I'm going to just select that particular group node and just press delete. So I'm going to click on that, and we're going to call this floor. We should actually call it SM_floor, static mesh _ floor. And then here, just click on that one. We have SM_wall, And then finally we should have sm underscore ceiling. So sm underscore ceiling. And let's now save our file, Control S. So if you want to, you can always group this, because it does make a bit more sense trying to keep your my file clean. So what I can do is essentially just group these. So I'm going to press Control G. I'm just going to double click on that and just tell it that this thing here needs to be called something appropriate, obviously. So I'll call it core structure. And that way we can identify this particular group as being floors, walls and ceilings. So before we do that, also we need to make sure that we have a situation where this thing, all the pivot points in the right place. You don't want them in some random place. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to move my pivot points for all my objects and just snap them to the corner. So I'm going to go into top view. I'll press 4 to go into wireframe, I suppose. That's going to help. We'll need to turn on our grid. So currently it is center. So what we need to do now is I'm just going to shift it all across to maybe this quadrant over here. So I'm just going to grab my pivot. In fact, I'll do the whole thing first of all, I suppose. That probably makes sense. So I'm just going to select the group. I'm going to press D. D is going to allow me to control the pivot point. I'm going to press V, and then I'm just going to drag this and snap it to the corner vert like so. Once I'm done, I just press D. And now I'm going to click X, and this is going to allow me to snap this entire object to the grid to world space center. There, just there. And now what we need to do is just make sure that these are correct in relation to pivot points, etc. You can see the pivot point is exactly correct there. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to select my ceiling initially, and I'm going to just press, we might as well, in fact we don't even need to do that. All I'll do is I'll literally just press D to control the pivot point. I'm going to choose this angle because it's going to make life easier, and I'm going to press V, and I'm going to snap that pivot point to the corner there. And then just once I'm done, press D again. So we now have a floor. The pivot point needs correcting on that as well. So I'm going to select the floor, press D again, press V to snap to verts, and drag this in the corner as well. And then finally, we're just going to select the wall and do the same there. So I've got my wall selected. I'm going to press D to control the pivot point. In fact, it was already controlling the pivot point there. I need to enable that again with D. Press V, and just drag in that corner there as well. Up to daisy. And just press Q to get rid of that. I'll just press D again. So now what we have is we have our wall, we have our floor and the pivot points in the right location, and we have our ceiling. This will just allow us to snap things a bit together in UE4 quite easily. So that looks good. Let's now save our file again. Control S. So what you need to do now is open up Unreal Engine 4 and use the third person project. So I'll show you how to do that now. So double click on the Epic or the Unreal application. You can sign up, and I will suggest that you do sign up, or you can just hit sign in later. So I'll just click sign in later. Give it a few moments to bring up the main interface. So then you should see something along these lines. Make sure you are using Unreal Engine 4.163, and I'm just going to click on that, and then I'll give it a few moments to load, because it can take quite a while. So at some point you will see this. It's going to give you an option to use existing project or new project. So in our case we want to click on new project, and we want third person. So I'm going to click on third person. Define where you want your project to go as well, and I'm just going to press create project, and again it will take a few moments to set that up. Once it loads, you should see something along these lines. So this is an existing template to use. If you use WASD, it's almost like a standard PC game FPS. You can zoom around and fly around your landscape. If you click on an object and press F and then press Alt, just like you do within Maya, you can essentially rotate around it. You can use right mouse button to zoom in and out, and the left mouse button in conjunction, just alone like so, you can just pan the scene. So just become accustomed to those controls. If we were looking to get to the character, just click on the character, press F. You can also, imagine this as the outliner, you can also select components within this and group folders, etc. So I'm just going to use I'm quite accustomed to using WASD to navigate around, so I'll stick with that. So currently, if we click on play, it's going to allow us, using WASD, to run around this particular landscape, and spacebar will jump as well. Very much like a standard PC game, I suppose. To get out of that, if you just press escape, it will just basically stop the play mode. Alt P will put you in full screen mode. Sorry, F11 should I say, yeah. Alt P will basically just play the game, yeah. And then you can press escape again. So rather than clicking on play there, Alt P will just allow you to run around quickly, and press escape will get you back out. F11 is to go into full screen mode, which is obviously quite useful. And now when I press Alt P, I can run around in full screen, and that's obviously very useful as well. So press escape to get back out of that, and I'll just press F11 to get out of full screen mode as well. So what we need to do is import our assets and move some of these assets out of the way so we can essentially start the process with ours. So what we'll do is we'll actually delete all these objects first of all. We don't need a lot of the objects that are already in the existing scene. So I'm going to click on Arena, or I'm going to click on the floor over here. For a press Shift, it will allow me to see which of those objects are which. So in theory, if I select the Arena and just press delete, frustratingly it doesn't delete all the objects, which is a bit stupid. Never mind. Select the objects like so and just press delete. So that's going to delete the Arena and the floor. In fact, what we'll do is I'm just going to undo that. We'll leave the floor in temporarily for the time being. So what I will do is, what I've done there is I'll just undo that. If I press Control and just click on the bottom on the floor, you can see that it's going to deselect the floor. So essentially, wall 7 to wall 11, just delete those. We'll leave the floor in for the time being. Just going to pan around and just select some of these objects and get shot of them as well. So I'm just going to clean the file up. Just allow me to just focus in on the floor itself. So what you see here, those black lines are basically a shadow. Those are the baked in lights. If you were to just wanted to get rid of those, because at the moment they're still showing shadows from an object that doesn't exist, you just need to press the build option over here. Make sure your lighting quality is just set to preview for the time being. Just literally press build. Give it a few moments to do its thing. And now that that's finished, you can see our shadows have now disappeared. The thing to note with the build is sometimes it can take quite a while to do a build, even if it's set to preview. Once you start lighting at production level, then it can take quite a while. So just be wary of that. You don't want to be pressing build all the time, because you can inevitably just wait ages for things to happen. So what we need to do is bring in our assets, and that's what we'll focus on now.